Smaug, the greatest and most famous dragon of the Third Age. His sack of Erebor is legendary, as is the tale of his demise. But where did this great serpent come from, and were there others of his kind? Today on Nerd of the Rings, we will attempt to answer these questions as we look at Smaug, the dragons of the Grey Mountains, and their war with the dwarves. While we know Smaug would sack Erebor in 2770 of the Third Age, we're going to go back further to find the most likely origin for this chiefest of calamities. After Morgoth is defeated at the end of the First Age, there are still many of his dragons left in Middle-earth, not to mention one Balrog that we know of. And it's with this Balrog where we begin today's story. In 1980 of the Third Age, the Balrog is awakened by the dwarves of Moria under King Durin VI. This leads to Durin's death and the abandonment of Moria by the dwarves. Driven from their home, a contingent of Durin's folk under King Thrain I establish Erebor, the kingdom under the mountain, in 1999. Most of Durin's folk, however, would come to dwell in the Grey Mountains, to the northwest of Erebor. One of the few documented stories about a specific dragon comes in the following year when Scatha the Worm, who had captured treasure from the dwarves of the Grey Mountains, is slain by Fram of the Eotheid people, the ancestors of the Rohirrim. You can learn more about these men in my video on the Eotheid. Over 200 years after the Lonely Mountain is established, King Thorin I abandons Erebor in 2210, so that he and his people can rejoin the rest of Durin's folk in the Grey Mountains. There they would live in relative peace until the year 2570. Over the years preceding this, the dragons of the north had multiplied and become a mighty force. In 2570, they make war on the dwarves of the Grey Mountains and begin plundering the halls of Durin's folk. Impressively, the dwarves hold their own for 19 years, but in 2589, the dragons come to the halls of King Dain I. The king, his son Fror, and likely many others were slain in the attack. The father and son are killed outside the halls of the king by a cold drake, a name for a dragon that cannot breathe fire. After this final blow in the war of the dwarves and dragons, the dwarves of the Grey Mountains abandon their home. With the death of King Dain I, the kingship passes to his son Thror, the grandfather of Thorin Oakenshield. Thror leads his people back to the Lonely Mountain, re-establishing the kingdom of Erebor. Gror, who is the king's youngest brother, leads a group of Durin's folk to the Iron Hills, where they create another settlement. Gror is the grandfather of Dain II, also known as Ironfoot, who would later succeed his cousin Thorin as king under the mountain. It's important to note that we don't know whether Smaug was involved in this conflict in the Grey Mountains. Both Smaug and Gandalf refer to him being young when he comes to Erebor in 2770. But old and strong when Bilbo comes there in 2941. So it's entirely possible that he was either too young to partake in the war, or not even born yet when the war ended in 2589. With the War of the Dwarves and Dragons now over, the dwarves of Erebor would once again have a period of peace, this time for around 180 years. During this time, the kingdom under the mountain flourishes. However, their old enemy would return, in the form of the greatest dragon of the Third Age, Smaug. Like many others, Smaug hears of the tremendous wealth of Erebor, and in 2770, he flies south and sacks the kingdom under the mountain. Tolkien describes Smaug's flight to be like a hurricane. He attacks at night, catching both the dwarves and the men of Dale off guard. It is said that he first lands on the mountain itself before flying down to the woods around Erebor and setting them ablaze. The dwarven warriors come out of the front gate to fight the dragon, but are all killed. Smaug then turns his attention to the warriors of Dale, killing most of them, including Lord Girion, the ancestor of Bard. The dragon then returns to the mountain, slaying more of the dwarves and entering through the front gate. King Thror and his son Thrain II survived the attack by escaping through the secret back door. Thorin, who was just 24 years old at the time, was one of the few dwarves who wasn't inside the mountain during the attack, and manages to escape as well. Smaug takes the mountain and the treasure within for his own. In the aftermath, the area of Erebor and Dale, which had been scorched by the dragon, comes to be known as the Desolation of Smaug. Durin's folk, once again forced from their home, are left to their exile, eventually coming to Dunland, where they would live for a time before the War of the Dwarves and Orcs, culminating in the Battle of Azanabalzar in 2799. 3 years later, in 2802, Thrain, now king of his people, settles in the Blue Mountains west of the Shire. For over 170 years, Smaug dwells with his treasure hoard, leaving only occasionally, presumably to hunt for food. We know that he would exit through the Great Gate by night and come to Dale and carry away people, especially maidens, to eat, until Dale is ruined and all the people either dead or gone. Smaug broods upon his treasure for a total of 171 years. This causes a phenomenon known as dragon sickness to come upon the treasure. This is a somewhat mysterious condition, as we really only know it is put upon gold on which a dragon has long brooded. Looking back at our earlier tale of Fram of the Eotheid, who killed the dragon Skatha, he refused to part with any of the treasure, despite the fact that this treasure likely belonged to the dwarves of the Grey Mountains before being taken by the dragon. It is believed that Fram was killed by the dwarves for this offense. Now, if you're curious what the dwarves did during this time that Smaug broods upon his treasure, check out my video on Thorin Oakenshield. We next hear of Smaug when Bilbo Baggins makes his way into the depths of Erebor in October 2941. After Bilbo steals a cup on October 22nd, Smaug takes notice. In The Hobbit, it says, "Dragons may not have real use for all their wealth, but they know it to an ounce as a rule, especially after long possession, and Smaug was no exception." This angers the dragon, who leaves his chamber and searches the mountainside for the culprit. He doesn't find Bilbo or the dwarves, but does manage to find their ponies. The next day, Bilbo returns to Smaug's lair, where they have their famous conversation.
"Well, thief, I smell you and I feel your air. I hear your breath. Come along. Help yourself again. There is plenty and to spare."
But Bilbo was not quite so unlearned in dragon lore as all that, and if Smaug hoped to get him to come nearer so easily, he was disappointed. "No thank you, O Smaug the Tremendous," he replied. "I did not come for presents. I only wished to have a look at you and see if you were truly as great as the tales say. I did not believe them."
"Do you now?"
said the dragon, somewhat flattered, even though he did not believe a word of it. "Truly, songs and tales fall utterly short of the reality, O Smaug, the chiefest and greatest of calamities," replied Bilbo.
"You have nice manners for a thief and a liar," said the dragon. "You seem familiar with my name, but I don't seem to remember smelling you before. Who are you and where do you come from, may I ask?"
"You may indeed. I come from under the hill, and under the hills and over the hills my paths led. And through the air I am he that walks unseen."
"So I can well believe,"
said Smaug.
"But that is hardly your usual name."
"I am the clue finder, the web cutter, the stinging fly. I was chosen for the lucky number."
"Lovely titles,"
sneered the dragon.
"But lucky numbers don't always come off."
"I am he that buries his friends alive and drowns them and draws them alive again from the water. I come from the end of a bag, but no bag went over me."
"These don't sound so creditable,"
scoffed Smaug. "I am the friend of bears and the guest of eagles. I am ring winner and luck wearer. I am barrel rider," went on Bilbo, beginning to be pleased with his riddling.
"That's better,"
said Smaug.
"But don't let your imagination run away with you."
This, of course, is the way to talk to dragons if you don't want to reveal your proper name, which is wise, and don't want to infuriate them by a flat refusal, which is also very wise. No dragon can resist the fascination of riddling talk and wasting time trying to understand it. There was a lot here which Smaug did not understand at all, though I expect you do since you know all about Bilbo's adventures to which he was referring. But he thought he understood enough, and he chuckled in his wicked inside.
I thought so last night.
He smiled to himself.
Lakemen. Some nasty scheme of those miserable tub-trading lakemen, or I'm a lizard. I haven't been down that way for an age and an age, but I will soon alter that. Very well, O Barrel Rider, he said aloud. Maybe Barrel was your pony's name, and maybe not. Though I think it was fat enough. You may walk unseen, but you did not walk all the way. Let me tell you, I ate 6 ponies last night, and I shall catch and eat all the others before long. In return for the excellent meal, I will give you one piece of advice for your good. Do not have more to do with dwarves than you can help.
Dwarves? Said Bilbo in a pretending surprise.
Don't talk to me,
said Smaug.
I know the smell and taste of dwarf, no one better. Don't tell me that I can eat a dwarf-ridden pony and not know it. You'll come to a bad end if you go with such friends, thief, Barrel Rider. I don't mind if you go back and tell them so from me.
But he did not tell Bilbo that there was one smell he could not make out at all, hobbit smell. It was quite outside his experience and puzzled him mightily.
I suppose you got a fair price for that cup last night?
He went on.
Come now, did you? Nothing at all. Well, that's just like them. And I suppose they are skulking outside, and your job is to do all the dangerous work and get what you can when I'm not looking for them? And you will get a fair share? Don't you believe it? If you get off alive, you will be lucky.
I tell you, he said, in an effort to remain loyal to his friends and to keep his end up, that gold was only an afterthought with us. We came over hill and under hill by wave and wind for revenge. Surely, O Smaug the unaccessibly wealthy, you must realize that your success has made you some bitter enemies. Then Smaug really did laugh, a devastating sound which shook Bilbo to the floor, while far up in the tunnel the dwarves huddled together and imagined that the hobbit had come to a sudden and a nasty end.
Revenge!
He snorted, and the light of his eyes lit the hall from floor to ceiling like scarlet lightning.
Revenge! The king under the mountain is dead, and where are his kin that dare seek revenge? Girion, Lord of Dale, is dead, and I have eaten his people like a wolf among sheep. And where are his sons that dare approach me? I kill where I wish, and none dare resist. I laid low the warriors of old, and their like is not in the world today. Then I was but young and tender. Now I am old and strong, strong, strong. Thief in the shadows, he gloated. My armor is like tenfold shields. My teeth are swords. My claws spears. The shock of my tail a thunderbolt. My wings a hurricane, and my breath, death.
Smaug is enraged by the idea that they would dare attempt revenge upon him. Knowing that the men of Lake Town likely assisted this thief and his dwarf friends, he decides to destroy the town on the lake.
Barrel Rider, he snorted. Your feet came from the waterside, and up the water you came without a doubt. I don't know your smell, but if you are not one of those men of the lake, you had their help. They shall see me and remember who is the real king under the mountain.
He rose in fire and went away south towards the running river.
Smaug flies over the lake, avoiding the water so as not to quench his fire. He sets the town ablaze and destroys the great house with a swipe of his tail. As the destruction rages on, a thrush flies to Bard the bowman. Another result of Smaug laying on his treasure for so long is that his stomach possesses armor made of gold and gems, save for one bare spot. The thrush had overheard Bilbo telling the dwarves of the bare spot in Smaug's armor and relays this information to Bard. Bard fires his last arrow, the Black Arrow, which had been passed down from generations past, and hits the spot on the dragon's left breast. Smaug falls from the sky, destroying Esgaroth in his ruin. Smaug is slain, but his effects would be felt for days and years to come. Smaug's treasure would claim at least 2 more victims of dragon sickness. Thorin is the first, as he refuses to part with any of the treasure to help Bard and his people. The second comes after the events of The Hobbit. After Bilbo's back home, he learns from Gandalf and Balin that King Dain had given the Master of Lake Town some of the gold to rebuild what the dragon had destroyed. The Master instead takes the gold and flees into the Waste, a region north of the Lonely Mountain, where he would die of starvation. Despite the Master's treachery, Lake Town would indeed be rebuilt further north than before. Smaug's bones remained at the location of the former Lake Town. It is said that his bones could be seen from the shore, but that no one would dare go into the water to retrieve the gems that had lined his belly. Even in death, Smaug's very bones struck fear into the hearts of men. While we don't know of any other dragons by name or by deed after Smaug's time, Gandalf implies that there are dragons still around after Smaug's death. In the Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf reveals to Frodo that Bilbo's ring is in fact the One Ring, he states, "It has been said that dragonfire could melt and consume rings of power, but there is not now any dragon left on Earth in which the old fire is hot enough. Nor was there ever any dragon, not even Enclegon the Black, who could have harmed the One Ring, the ruling ring, for that was made by Sauron himself." It's yet another fun thing to think and theorize about, the possibility of dragons being around after Smaug. As for Enclegon, Glaurung, and the other dragons of the First Age, we'll have to cover them in a future video. Now this was a bit of a special video for me, as my 4-year-old requested a video on Smaug, his favorite character, and Funko Pop. You may be thinking, I want to request a video. How can I have a say in what comes next? Well, aside from subscribing and leaving a comment, which you can do anytime, you can also join my wonderful community of Patreon supporters like Tom DeBombadil19, Sky Carcass, Judy IHOPS, Jim Limber Davis, Smorzerk, and Matt Schultz, who are currently voting for the next video topic. As always, thank you for watching and subscribing. I can't wait to see what 2021 has in store for the channel, and I look forward to another great year of diving into Middle-earth with all of you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.